Halloween night, 2023. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, adjusting a plastic pirate hat that cost $12 at the grocery store. The eye patch kept sliding down my face, and the fake sword looked like something a toddler would use to fight imaginary dragons. Behind me, Ember, my wife of 8 years, squeezed herself into a black cat suit that left absolutely nothing to the imagination. "How do I look?" she asked, striking a pose that belonged in a magazine I wasn't supposed to admit I read. "Like trouble," I said, which was the truth wrapped in what she'd take as a compliment. "My name is Tanner Jossman, and I manage the Riverside Grill downtown. It's not glamorous work, but it pays the bills and keeps our 2 kids in soccer cleats and art supplies. At 37, I've learned that life rarely matches the brochure. Marriage is mostly negotiating who takes out the garbage and pretending to care about reality television. Halloween is amateur hour for adults who peaked in college. But Ember lived for nights like this. At 35, she still turned heads at every grocery store and parent-teacher conference. She taught fitness classes at the community center, which meant she spent her days surrounded by suburban moms who treated her like some kind of wellness guru. Tonight, in that cat suit, she looked like she could steal the crown jewels or break every heart in a 5-mile radius. "Ready to go, Captain Hook?" she teased, grabbing her keys. "It's a pirate costume, not Peter Pan," I corrected, following her to the garage. "And technically, I'm plundering your social calendar tonight." She laughed, but it sounded hollow. Ember's laugh used to fill rooms. These days, it barely filled the space between us. The party was at Richard and Nikki Morrison's house, a suburban McMansion with a 3-car garage and a mortgage that probably cost more than my annual salary. Richard had been my best friend since high school, back when we thought we'd conquer the world instead of settling for middle management and weekend barbecues. Now he sold insurance and hosted Halloween parties where grown adults pretended to be pirates and superheroes. Cars lined the street when we arrived. Through the windows, I could see costumed figures moving around, drinks in hand, laughter spilling onto the front lawn. Someone had decorated with fake tombstones and plastic skeletons. Orange lights twinkled from every available surface. "There's Susie," Ember said, waving to a woman dressed as a witch. Susie Farrow was Ember's best friend since middle school, married to my business partner Wes. She had dark hair, sharp features, and the kind of sense of humor that cut deep when she wanted it to. "Where's Tarzan?" I asked, looking around for Wes. "Probably flexing in a mirror somewhere," Ember said, but her voice had an edge I couldn't quite place. We walked through the front door into chaos. The Morrison house had been transformed into a Halloween wonderland. Fake spider webs covered the chandelier. A fog machine pumped artificial mist across the hardwood floors. Adults in costumes that ranged from creative to ridiculous filled every room, drinks in hand, voices raised over a playlist that mixed classic rock with monster movie soundtracks. "Tanner!" Richard appeared at my elbow, dressed as a vampire complete with plastic fangs that made him lisp. "Glad you made it. Bars in the kitchen, foods everywhere else." "Thanks, Dracula," I said. "Nice party. Very orange." "Nikki went overboard with the decorations," he admitted. "She's been planning this since August." I scanned the crowd, taking inventory. John Mitchell, my friend from the restaurant business, had come as a zombie chef. The Hendersons from down the street were matching pirates, which made me feel less ridiculous about my costume. Various neighbors, co-workers, and friends of friends filled the spaces between, all pretending that dressing up for one night made them interesting. And then I saw him. Wes Farrow stood near the fireplace, holding court with a group of women who hung on his every word. He'd come as Tarzan, which basically meant he wore a loincloth and showed off the physique he'd been building since high school. At 39, Wes still looked like he could wrestle a lion and win. He was my business partner in a small construction consulting firm, the kind of guy who solved problems with his hands and charm instead of spreadsheets and meetings. He was also staring at my wife, like she was the only person in the room. "Earth to Tanner," Richard said, following my gaze. "You okay?" "Fine," I lied, just wondering if Wes knows that Tarzan actually wore more clothes in the movies. Richard laughed, but I caught something in his expression. A flicker of discomfort, maybe, or knowledge he didn't want to share. Ember had already made her way across the room, accepting compliments on her costume from everyone she passed. Women told her she looked amazing. Men told her the same thing with their eyes. She moved through the crowd like she owned it, confident and magnetic in a way that reminded me why I'd fallen for her in the first place. "She looks incredible tonight." Nikki Morrison appeared beside me, dressed as a 1920s flapper. "That costume must have cost a fortune." "Worth every penny," I said, though I had no idea what it cost. Ember handled her own shopping, especially when it came to clothes. "How are things with you two?" Nikki asked, and something in her tone made me look at her more carefully. "Fine," I said automatically. "Why?" "Just asking," she said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Marriage is hard work, you know, especially when you're both busy with careers and kids." Before I could ask what she meant by that, John Mitchell appeared with a beer for me and a story about a kitchen disaster that had him laughing so hard he could barely get the words out. I let myself get pulled into the conversation, but part of my attention stayed focused on Ember across the room. She was talking to Susie now, their heads close together, like they were sharing secrets. Wes had joined them, standing just a little too close to my wife. When Ember laughed at something he said, she touched his arm. Just a brief contact, the kind of casual touch that happens at parties between friends, except it didn't look casual. "You're staring," John said, following my gaze. "Just keeping an eye on things," I said. "Wes is harmless," John said, but he didn't sound entirely convinced. "All show, no substance." "Right," I said, taking a long drink of my beer. The party continued around us. People moved from room to room, refilling drinks, sampling food, posing for photos that would end up on social media. I played my part, laughing at jokes, making small talk, complimenting costumes, but I kept watching Ember and Wes gravitate toward each other throughout the night, watching the way they found excuses to stand close, watching Susie watch them both with an expression I couldn't quite read. Around 11, I went looking for the bathroom and found myself in the Morrisons' hallway, surrounded by family photos and kids' artwork. The main bathroom was occupied, so I headed upstairs to the guest bathroom. The hallway was quiet, insulated from the party noise below. That's when I heard them. "Can't keep doing this," Ember's voice coming from the master bedroom. "Why not?" Wes, his voice lower, more intimate than it had any right to be. "Because it's getting complicated," Ember said. "Tanner's not stupid." "Tanner's not paying attention," Wes replied. "When's the last time he really looked at you? I mean, really looked?" I stood frozen in the hallway, my plastic sword suddenly feeling very real in my hand. Through the crack in the bedroom door, I could see shadows moving, two figures standing close together. "This weekend," Ember said. "We can talk about it this weekend." "Your sister's place?" Wes asked. "Yeah," Ember said. "Just you and me. No interruptions." I backed away from the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. The conversation continued, but I couldn't hear the words anymore over the sound of my own pulse. I made it to the guest bathroom, locked the door, and stared at myself in the mirror. The pirate costume looked even more ridiculous now. The eye patch had slipped again, and the fake sword hung at my side like a child's toy. I looked like exactly what I was, a middle-aged restaurant manager playing dress-up while his wife planned a weekend getaway with another man. When I came back downstairs, the party was winding down. People were saying their goodbyes, collecting coats, making plans for coffee dates and lunch meetings. Ember stood by the front door, chatting with other guests, looking perfectly normal, like she hadn't just been upstairs planning her next move. Ready to go? She asked when she saw me. Whenever you are, I said. We said our goodbyes to Richard and Nikki, thanked them for hosting, promised to get together soon. Normal party conversation, normal party behavior. But everything felt different now. Every smile seemed forced, every laugh seemed hollow. In the car, Ember talked about the costumes, the decorations, the food. She mentioned how good Susie looked as a witch, how funny John's zombie chef costume was, how Richard's vampire teeth made him impossible to understand. She didn't mention Wes. Good party, I said when she paused for breath. Yeah, she agreed. Richard and Nikki always throw the best parties. Wes seemed to be enjoying himself, I said, testing the waters. Did he? I barely talked to him, Ember said, which was a lie so obvious it almost made me laugh. We drove the rest of the way home in comfortable silence, or what used to be comfortable silence. Now it felt like the space between us was filled with things we weren't saying. Questions I wasn't asking. Answers I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. At home, we went through our usual routine. Ember removed her makeup while I hung up my costume. We brushed our teeth side by side at the bathroom sink, like we had thousands of times before. She kissed me goodnight, a quick peck that landed somewhere near my cheek. I'm tired, she said. Long day. Yeah, I said. Me too. She fell asleep quickly, or pretended to. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation I'd overheard, the way they'd stood together, the casual intimacy in their voices. This weekend, your sister's place. I knew Ember's sister lived in Chicago, about 3 hours away. I knew Ember visited her regularly, usually for girls' weekends or shopping trips. I'd never questioned it before. Why would I? But now, lying in the dark next to my wife, I found myself questioning everything. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, the kind of November weather that makes you want to stay in bed and pretend the world doesn't exist. I woke up alone. Ember's side of the bed was cold, which meant she'd been up for a while. I could hear her moving around downstairs, probably getting ready for her Saturday morning yoga class. I found her in the kitchen, dressed in workout clothes, hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was packing her gym bag with the focused efficiency of someone who had places to be and people to see. Morning, I said, starting the coffee maker. Morning, she replied without looking up. I've got back-to-back classes this morning, then I need to run some errands. I'll probably be gone most of the day. No problem, I said. I've got some paperwork to catch up on anyway. She kissed my cheek on her way out, the same perfunctory gesture from the night before. The front door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving me alone with my coffee and my thoughts. I tried to focus on work. Invoices needed processing, schedules needed updating, vendor contracts needed reviewing. The restaurant business never sleeps, even on weekends. But my mind kept drifting back to the conversation I'd overheard at the party. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from Ember. Running late, grabbing lunch with Susie. See you tonight. I stared at the message, looking for hidden meaning in 12 simple words. Was she really with Susie? Or was this part of whatever plan she and Wes had discussed? I called the gym. Riverside Fitness, this is Jessica, a cheerful voice answered. Hi, this is Tanner Jossman. I was wondering if my wife Ember is teaching today. Oh, hi, Mr. Jossman. Ember finished her last class about an hour ago. She left right after. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, I said. Just trying to coordinate schedules, thanks. So, she had been at the gym, but she'd left an hour ago, and lunch with Susie didn't usually take 3 hours. I found myself doing something I'd never done before, checking up on my wife. I called Susie. Hey, Tanner, she answered on the third ring. What's up? Is Ember with you? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. There was a pause, just a beat too long. No, why? She said she was having lunch with you. I was trying to reach her about dinner plans. Another pause. Oh, that. We were supposed to meet, but she canceled. Something about errands. You know how she is. I did know how she was. Ember was many things, but a liar had never been one of them. At least I'd never caught her at it before. "Right," I said. "Well, if you hear from her, tell her to call me." "Sure thing," Susie said, but something in her voice sounded off, like she was reading from a script. I spent the afternoon in a strange state of suspended animation. I tried to work, tried to watch television, tried to do anything that would keep my mind occupied. But every few minutes, I found myself checking my phone, waiting for Ember to call or text with an update. She came home around 6, carrying shopping bags from the mall and wearing the satisfied expression of someone who'd had a successful day. "How was lunch with Susie?" I asked. "Good," she said, setting down her bags. "We went to that new place downtown, the one with the salads." "Susie said you canceled," I said, watching her face carefully. For just a moment her expression flickered, like she was recalibrating, choosing her next words carefully. "Oh, that. We rescheduled. I forgot I had that appointment first." "What appointment?" "Hair appointment," she said, running her fingers through her hair. "Just a trim." I looked at her hair. It looked exactly the same as it had that morning. "Looks good," I said. "Thanks," she said, already moving toward the stairs. "I'm going to take a shower. What do you want to do for dinner?" We ordered pizza and watched a movie, going through the motions of a normal Saturday night. But everything felt performative now, like we were both playing roles we'd memorized. Ember seemed distracted, checking her phone more often than usual. When I asked about it, she said it was just work stuff. Sunday was worse. Ember announced over breakfast that she was planning to visit her sister the following weekend. "Just a girls' weekend," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "We haven't seen each other in months." "That sounds nice," I said, though my stomach was twisting into knots. "When are you leaving?" "Friday afternoon. I'll probably come back Sunday evening." "Want me to drive you to the airport?" "No need," she said quickly. "I'm driving. It's only 3 hours, and I like the road trip. 3 hours to Chicago. Plenty of time to meet someone along the way, or to meet someone there. I spent Sunday afternoon doing yard work, raking leaves and cleaning gutters while my mind raced through possibilities. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the conversation I'd overheard had been innocent. Maybe Ember really was just planning a weekend with her sister. But then I remembered the way Wes had looked at her at the party. The way she'd touched his arm. The way they'd gravitated toward each other all night. Monday morning, I did something that felt like crossing a line. I checked our shared email account. Ember and I had set up a joint email address years ago for household stuff. Bills, school communications, appointment confirmations. We both had access to it, though we rarely used it for anything important. It was mostly just a digital filing cabinet for the mundane details of married life. That's where I found it. A confirmation email from the Lakeside Resort, dated that morning. 2 guests. Check-in Friday, check-out Sunday. Deluxe suite with king bed and lake view. The romantic getaway package that included champagne, chocolate-covered strawberries, and couples massage appointments. The reservation was under Ember's name. The second guest was listed as Wes Farrow. I stared at the screen for a long time, reading the confirmation over and over like the words might change if I looked at them hard enough. But they didn't change. The details were all there, spelled out in cheerful marketing language designed to help couples reconnect and rekindle their romance. My wife was planning a romantic weekend getaway with my business partner. I printed the confirmation email, then I screenshot it. Then I saved it to 3 different folders on my computer. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew I wanted evidence that couldn't be deleted or denied. The rest of Monday passed in a blur. I went through the motions at work, reviewed vendor contracts, handled staff scheduling, dealt with the usual restaurant crises. But part of my mind was somewhere else, processing what I'd discovered and trying to figure out what to do next. The obvious answer was to confront Ember, to show her the email and demand an explanation, to have the conversation that married couples are supposed to have when trust breaks down. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was strategy. Or maybe I just wanted to see how far she would go with the lie. That evening, Ember talked about her upcoming weekend trip with the enthusiasm of someone genuinely excited about seeing family. "Sarah's been so stressed with work lately," she said, referring to her sister. "I think she really needs some girl time. We're planning to hit the outlets, maybe get our nails done, sister stuff." "Sounds perfect," I said. "She's lucky to have you." Ember smiled, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married. Warm, genuine, caring. It almost made me doubt what I'd seen in that email. Almost. Tuesday, I called the lakeside resort. "I'd like to confirm a reservation," I told the cheerful woman who answered the phone. "Of course. What name is the reservation under?" "Ember Jossman," I said. "Check in this Friday." "Let me see. Yes, here it is. Mrs. Jossman, party of 2, Deluxe Lake View Suite. You're all set for the romantic getaway package. Is there anything you'd like to add to your reservation?" "Actually, I need to verify the second guest name," I said. "I want to make sure it's spelled correctly on your records." "Of course. I show the second guest as Wesley Farrow, Farrow. "That's correct," I said, my voice somehow staying steady. "Thank you. Is there anything else I can help you with today? We're really looking forward to having you stay with us." "No," I said. "I think I have everything I need." I hung up and sat in my office, staring out the window at the lunch crowd walking by on the sidewalk. Normal people living normal lives, dealing with normal problems. None of them were sitting in a restaurant office at 2 in the afternoon, confirming that their spouse was planning a romantic getaway with someone else. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to confront Ember. I wasn't going to demand explanations or try to save our marriage with tears and ultimatums. I was going to do something else entirely. I was going to let her hang herself with her own rope. Wednesday evening, I started laying the groundwork. "I've been thinking about your weekend trip," I told Ember as we cleaned up after dinner. "Oh," she said, not looking up from loading the dishwasher. "I think it's great that you and Sarah are making time for each other. Family is important." "It really is," Ember agreed. "We've both been so busy lately." "I was thinking maybe I should plan something similar," I said. "A guy's weekend. Maybe invite Richard and John, make it a regular thing." "That sounds wonderful," Ember said, and she seemed genuinely pleased by the idea. "You deserve some time to relax." "Maybe I'll call Wes too," I said casually. "See if he wants to join us." Ember's hand froze on the dishwasher door. Just for a second, but I caught it. "Wes might be busy this weekend," she said. "I think Susie mentioned something about family plans." "Really? What kind of family plans?" "I'm not sure," Ember said, closing the dishwasher with more force than necessary. "You know how Susie is, always planning something." Interesting. So Wes had an alibi, too. I wondered what story he'd told his wife. Thursday night, Ember packed for her trip. I watched her fold clothes into her weekend bag, selecting outfits with more care than usual. She packed the black dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, the perfume she only wore for special occasions, lingerie that definitely wasn't designed for sister bonding time. "Traveling light?" I asked. "Sarah and I are planning to do some shopping," she said. "I don't want to overpack." "Smart thinking," I said. "Have you heard from her today? Is she excited about the weekend?" "Oh, yes," Ember said quickly. "She can't wait. It's been too long since we've had quality time together." I nodded and smiled, playing the role of the supportive husband. But inside, I was counting down the hours until Friday afternoon, when Ember would leave for her sister's weekend, and I would put my plan into motion. Because I had a plan now. A simple, elegant plan that would expose the truth without me having to fire a single shot. Sometimes the best revenge is just giving people enough rope to hang themselves, and I was about to provide all the rope Ember needed. Friday afternoon arrived with the kind of crisp November clarity that makes everything seem sharper, more defined. Ember finished packing around 2 o'clock, checking and rechecking her weekend bag like she was preparing for a much longer journey. "I should get going," she said, glancing at her watch. "Traffic's going to be terrible, and I promised Sarah I'd be there by dinner time." "Drive safe," I said, kissing her cheek. "Tell Sarah I said hello." "I will," she promised, shouldering her bag. "I'll call you tonight when I get there." I watched from the front window as she backed out of the driveway, her car disappearing around the corner. Then I went to my computer and opened our family group chat. The Jossman family chat had been Ember's idea, a way to stay connected with parents, siblings, cousins, and in-laws scattered across 3 states. It included my parents in Florida, Ember's parents in Ohio, her sister Sarah in Chicago, my brother Mike in Denver, and about 15 other relatives who chimed in regularly with photos, updates, and commentary on family news. Ember loved that chat. She was always the first to share photos from family gatherings, to remember birthdays, to coordinate holiday plans. She'd carefully cultivated her image as the perfect daughter-in-law, the caring sister, the family member who kept everyone connected, which made what I was about to do even more effective. I opened a new message and typed, "Hey everyone, just wanted to share some exciting news about Ember's weekend getaway." Then I attached the hotel confirmation email. All of it. The reservation details, the romantic package description, the couple's massage appointments, the champagne and chocolate-covered strawberries, and most importantly, the guest list showing Ember Jossman and Wesley Farrow as the happy couple planning to reconnect and rekindle their romance. I added a brief message. "Looks like Ember's having quite the adventure with her sister this weekend. Thought you'd all want to know about this special family bonding time." Then I hit send. The response was immediate. My phone started buzzing within minutes. First, my mother. "Tanner, what is this? Is this some kind of mistake?" Then Ember's mother. "I don't understand. Who is Wesley Farrow? Why isn't she staying with Sarah?" My brother Mike. "Dude, what the hell is going on?" Ember's cousin Jessica. "OMG, is this real? Is Ember having an affair?" The messages kept coming, faster than I could read them. Shock, confusion, anger, demands for explanation. The family group chat exploded into chaos as relatives tried to process what they were seeing. Sarah, Ember's sister, was one of the first to call me directly. "Tanner, what is this email about? Ember told me she was coming to visit this weekend, but I haven't heard from her since Tuesday." "You haven't heard from her?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "No. And now I'm seeing this hotel reservation with some man's name on it. What's going on?" "I wish I knew," I said, which was technically true. I knew what was happening, but I didn't know why. "I found the confirmation in our shared email this morning. I was hoping you could explain it." "This is insane," Sarah said. "Ember would never... she's always talking about you and the kids. She loves you." "I thought so too," I said quietly. The phone calls continued throughout the afternoon. Ember's parents, my parents, siblings, cousins, family friends who'd been included in the group chat. Everyone wanted answers I couldn't provide, or rather, answers I chose not to provide directly. Instead, I let them draw their own conclusions from the evidence. Around 6 o'clock, my phone rang with a call from Ember. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Tanner," she said, and her voice was tight with panic. "What did you do?" "What do you mean?" I asked innocently. "The family chat. That email. Why did you send that?" "Oh, that," I said. "I thought everyone would be excited to hear about your romantic weekend. Isn't that what families do? Share good news?" "It's not what it looks like," she said quickly. "I can explain everything." "I'm sure you can," I said. "But maybe you should explain it to everyone else first. They're all very concerned. Tanner, please, let me come home. We can talk about this." You're supposed to be in Chicago with your sister, I said. Didn't you promise her quality time together? There was a long pause. In the background, I could hear voices, music, the ambient noise of what sounded like a hotel lobby. Where are you right now? I asked. I'm driving, she said, but the background noise suggested otherwise. Driving where? Another pause. I'm coming home. From Chicago? That's a long drive. You must have just gotten there. Tanner, stop playing games. We need to talk. We are talking, I said. And apparently, so is everyone else in your family. Your mom's been calling every 10 minutes. She's very confused about your travel plans. I could hear Ember breathing on the other end of the line, probably trying to figure out how to salvage the situation. I'll be home in 2 hours, she said finally. Take your time, I said. I'll be here. But I wouldn't be just sitting around waiting. I had more work to do. After Ember hung up, I opened my laptop and started documenting everything. I screenshot every message from the family chat, saved every voicemail from confused relatives, printed copies of the hotel reservation and payment confirmations. If Ember wanted to play the explanation game, I was going to make sure I had all the evidence organized and ready. Then I did something that felt both necessary and slightly vindictive. I changed the locks. It took me about an hour to swap out the front door lock and the back door deadbolt. I'd done enough home improvement projects over the years to handle basic lock installation, and I wanted to make sure I controlled access to the house when Ember returned. While I worked, my phone kept buzzing with updates from the family chat. The initial shock was giving way to anger and taking sides. Ember's mother was defending her, insisting there must be some misunderstanding. My mother was asking pointed questions about our marriage that I didn't want to answer. My brother Mike was offering to drive up from Denver to help with the situation, which probably meant he wanted to punch someone. The most interesting response came from Ember's cousin Jessica, who worked in hotel management. I looked up this lakeside resort, she posted to the group chat. This romantic getaway package costs $800 a night. That's not exactly sister bonding money. And the couple's massage appointments? They're scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. Both names are on the booking. She included screenshots of the resort's website, highlighting the package details and pricing. The evidence was becoming overwhelming, even for Ember's most loyal defenders. Around 8:30, I heard a car in the driveway. Through the front window, I could see Ember getting out of her car, moving with the quick, agitated steps of someone who was about to have a very difficult conversation. She tried her key in the front door. When it didn't work, she tried it again, jiggling the handle with increasing frustration. Then she started knocking. "Tanner, open the door." I took my time getting there, checking my appearance in the hall mirror first. I wanted to look calm, composed, completely in control of the situation. When I opened the door, Ember looked like she'd been through a blender. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, her clothes wrinkled like she'd been sitting in a car for hours. Which I supposed she had. "You changed the locks," she said. "Security upgrade," I replied. "Can't be too careful these days." She pushed past me into the house, dropping her weekend bag in the foyer. "We need to talk." "I agree," I said, closing the door behind her. "But first you might want to check your phone. Your mother's been trying to reach you." Ember pulled out her phone and stared at the screen. I could see her face pale as she scrolled through the dozens of missed calls and messages. "How could you do this?" she asked, looking up at me with something that might have been genuine hurt. "How could you humiliate me like this?" "I didn't humiliate you," I said calmly. "I just shared some information with the family. Information I found in our shared email account. Information you put there." "It's not what it looks like," she said again, but the words sounded hollow even to her. "What does it look like?" I asked. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my wife booked a romantic weekend getaway with my business partner and then lied to me about visiting her sister." Ember sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. "It's complicated." I'm sure it is, I said, sitting across from her. Why don't you uncomplicate it for me? For a moment, I thought she might actually tell the truth. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes, and I could see her weighing her options, trying to decide between confession and continued deception. She chose deception. Wes is going through a rough patch with Susie, she said. He needed someone to talk to, and I was just trying to help a friend. By booking a couple's massage? That was a mistake. I didn't realize what package I was selecting. I was just looking for a quiet place where we could talk without interruption. And you couldn't talk here? Or at a coffee shop? Or literally anywhere that didn't require lying to both our families? Ember's phone rang. Her mother's name appeared on the screen. You should answer that, I said. She's been very worried. Ember declined the call, but it started ringing again immediately. This time it was her sister Sarah. They're not going to stop calling, I said. You might as well start explaining. Over the next hour, Ember fielded phone calls from increasingly upset family members. I listened as she tried to spin the hotel reservation as a misunderstanding, a booking error, a complicated situation that wasn't what it appeared to be. But her explanations kept changing, contradicting each other, becoming more elaborate and less believable with each call. The problem with lies is that they require perfect memory and flawless execution. The truth is much simpler. It stays consistent because it actually happened. By 10 o'clock, even Ember's mother was asking pointed questions about the timeline and details that didn't add up. Mom, I can't explain everything right now, Ember said into the phone, her voice strained with exhaustion. Just trust me that it's not what it looks like. But trust, once broken, is hard to repair with words alone. After she hung up from her mother, Ember turned to me with desperate eyes. What do you want? She asked. What will it take to fix this? I want the truth, I said simply. I told you the truth. No, I said, pulling out my phone. You told me a story, but I have the truth right here. I showed her the screenshot I'd taken of her text conversation with Wes, the one I'd glimpsed at the Halloween party when she'd left her phone on the kitchen counter, the one where they'd discussed finally having time alone and making this weekend special. Ember stared at the screen, her face going through a series of expressions: shock, anger, resignation, and finally, something that might have been relief. How long have you known? She asked quietly. Long enough, I said. She nodded slowly, like she was finally accepting that the game was over. What happens now? She asked. I looked at my wife of 8 years, the mother of my children, the woman I'd thought I'd grow old with. She looked small and defeated, nothing like the confident fitness instructor who'd commanded attention at every party and social gathering. Now, I said, you get to explain to everyone why you lied, and I get to decide what comes next. My phone buzzed with another message from the family chat. This time, it was my brother Mike. Tanner, whatever you need, I'm here. This is messed up, but we've got your back. Similar messages were coming in from other family members, people who'd been shocked by the revelation, but were now rallying around me, offering support, expressing outrage on my behalf. Ember saw me reading the messages, and something in her expression shifted. You planned this, she said. You knew exactly what would happen when you sent that email. I shared information, I said. What happened next was up to everyone else. You destroyed my reputation. I think you did that yourself when you booked a romantic getaway with another man. Ember's phone rang again. This time it was Wes. She looked at me, then at the phone, then back at me. Answer it, I said. I'd love to hear his explanation. But instead of answering, Ember declined the call and turned off her phone. I think, she said slowly, I need to find somewhere else to stay tonight. I think you're right, I agreed. She gathered her things and headed for the door, then paused with her hand on the handle. Tanner, she said without turning around. I'm sorry. I know, I said. But sorry doesn't fix this. After she left, I sat in the quiet house, processing what had just happened. My marriage was over. My family was in chaos. My business partnership with Wes was probably finished, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. The truth was out, and the consequences were just beginning. Saturday morning brought a different kind of quiet to the house. Not the comfortable silence of a weekend morning with family, but the hollow emptiness of a space that suddenly felt too big for one person. I made coffee for one, read the newspaper alone, and tried to figure out what normal was supposed to look like now. My phone had been buzzing steadily since dawn, with messages from family members, friends, and people I hadn't heard from in months. Word was spreading beyond our immediate family circle, the way scandals do in small communities where everyone knows everyone else's business. Around 10 o'clock, Richard called. "Tanner, man, I just heard. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, which was becoming my standard response to that question. Nikki and I were talking, and we realized we should have said something sooner. We've been seeing signs for months, but we didn't want to interfere. What kind of signs? The way they looked at each other, the way they always ended up talking alone at parties. Last month at the Hendersons' barbecue, Nikki saw them disappear for like an hour. When they came back, Ember's lipstick was gone and Wes had grass stains on his shirt. I processed this information, adding it to the growing pile of evidence I'd been unconsciously collecting. Why didn't you say anything? What were we supposed to say? "Hey, Tanner, we think your wife might be having an affair based on some suspicious behavior at a barbecue. We hoped we were wrong." "I understand," I said, and I did. Nobody wants to be the messenger in situations like this. "Listen," Richard continued, "my mother-in-law is in town this weekend, and she's been asking about the drama. Apparently news travels fast in the family networks. She suggested we all get together for dinner tomorrow night. You know, show some family support." That's nice of her, but I'm not really in a socializing mood. "Actually," Richard said, and something in his tone made me pay closer attention. "Nikki heard from Susie that Ember's planning to show up at Sunday dinner at your parents' place. Something about wanting to set the record straight with the family." My parents lived about 20 minutes away in a retirement community where Sunday dinner was a sacred tradition. Extended family members often joined them, especially when there was drama to discuss or sides to choose. "She's going to ambush the family dinner?" I asked. "That's what it sounds like. Susie seemed to think Ember had some kind of plan to win everyone back over." I thought about this for a moment. Ember was smart, charming, and had 8 years of relationship building with my extended family. If she showed up with the right story, the right amount of tears and contrition, she might actually be able to salvage her reputation and paint me as the villain who'd humiliated her publicly. "Richard," I said, "what time is dinner tomorrow?" 6 o'clock. Why?" "I think I need to make sure I get there first." Sunday afternoon, I spent 2 hours preparing for what I was starting to think of as the final battle. I printed out every piece of evidence I'd collected: the hotel reservations, the payment confirmations, the text message screenshots, the timeline of lies Ember had told different family members. I organized it all in a folder, like a prosecutor preparing for trial. Then I called my mother. "Tanner, honey, how are you holding up?" she asked, her voice full of the kind of concern that only mothers can properly convey. "I'm managing, Mom. Listen, I heard Ember might be coming to dinner tonight." "She called this morning," Mom confirmed. "She sounded very upset. She said there were things she needed to explain to the family, that the situation wasn't what it appeared to be." "I'm sure she did," I said. "Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to trust me on this. Can you make sure everyone's there tonight? All the uncles and aunts and cousins who usually come? I think it's important that we're all together for this conversation." "Tanner, what are you planning?" "I'm planning to make sure everyone has all the facts before they make any decisions about who to believe." There was a pause. "Should I be worried?" "No, Mom, but Ember should be." I arrived at my parents' house at 5:30, giving myself time to set up before the other guests arrived. My parents lived in a modest ranch house with a dining room that could seat 12 people if everyone squeezed together. Tonight, it was going to be crowded. By 6 o'clock, the house was full. My parents, my brother Mike, who'd driven up from Denver, Uncle Paul and Aunt Linda, cousins Jennifer and Tom with their spouses, and my grandmother, who'd insisted on coming despite being 86 and legally blind. The kind of family gathering that usually centered around holidays or major announcements. Tonight, it was going to center around the end of my marriage. We were halfway through the salad course when Ember arrived. She knocked on the front door like a guest instead of using her key, which she'd always done before. When my father let her in, she looked like she'd spent considerable time preparing for this moment. Her hair was perfect, her makeup was subtle but flawless, and she was wearing the blue dress that everyone always complimented her on. She looked like the Ember everyone remembered, beautiful, composed, and slightly vulnerable in a way that made people want to protect her. "I'm sorry I'm late," she said, accepting hugs and kisses from family members who weren't quite sure how to react to her presence. "I hope there's still room for one more." "Of course, dear," my mother said, though I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. "We'll squeeze in another chair." Ember took the seat across from me, which put her in the center of the table where everyone could see her. Strategic positioning, I realized. She wanted to be able to make eye contact with everyone as she told her version of the story. "I know you all have questions," she began, her voice steady but emotional. "And I know the information Tanner shared yesterday was shocking and confusing. I wanted a chance to explain what really happened because I love this family and I don't want anyone to think badly of me based on a misunderstanding." She was good, I had to admit. The right amount of vulnerability mixed with dignity. The perfect tone of someone who'd been wronged but was taking the high road. "Wes Farrow has been a friend of our family for years," she continued. "And recently, he's been going through a very difficult time with his marriage. He reached out to me for advice as a friend, and I agreed to meet with him to talk through his problems." Nods around the table. This sounded reasonable so far. "The hotel reservation was my mistake," Ember said, looking directly at my mother. "I was trying to book a place where we could talk privately without running into people we knew. I didn't realize I was selecting a couple's package. It was an honest error." More nods. The family wanted to believe her. She was one of them, after all. She'd been coming to these dinners for 8 years. "When Tanner found the confirmation email, I panicked," she continued. "I knew how it would look, and I was afraid no one would believe the truth. So I made another mistake. I lied about visiting Sarah. I was embarrassed and scared, and I handled the situation badly." She paused, letting a single tear roll down her cheek. "I'm not proud of the choices I made, but I want everyone to know that I love my husband and my children, and I would never do anything to hurt this family." The silence that followed was heavy with emotion. I could see family members exchanging glances, processing what they'd heard, wanting to believe that this was all just a terrible misunderstanding. That's when I opened my folder. "That's a beautiful story, Ember," I said calmly, "but I think everyone deserves to hear the rest of it." I pulled out the first document, a printed copy of the hotel's website showing the romantic getaway package details. "This is what Ember accidentally booked," I said, passing it around the table. "Couples massage, champagne service, chocolate-covered strawberries, and a king-size bed with rose petals. Quite a mistake for someone who just wanted a quiet place to talk." Ember's composure flickered slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Like I said, I didn't read the details carefully." "That's understandable," I said, pulling out the next document. "But this is harder to explain." I passed around screenshots of the text conversation I'd captured between Ember and Wes. The messages were clearly romantic in nature, discussing their excitement about finally having time alone and making this weekend special. "These texts were sent 3 days before the hotel reservation," I said, "which suggests this wasn't a last-minute decision to help a friend in crisis." The mood in the room was shifting. I could see doubt creeping into the faces around the table. "Tanner, please," Ember said, her voice starting to crack. "You're taking things out of context." "Am I?" I asked, pulling out the final piece of evidence, because this might provide some context. I placed a printed email on the table. It was a confirmation for couples massage appointments at the hotel spa, booked under both Ember's and Wes's names, scheduled for Saturday afternoon. "This appointment was made yesterday morning," I said. "After you'd already been caught, after you'd already told everyone it was just a misunderstanding. You were still planning to go through with it." The silence that followed was deafening. Ember stared at the paper like it was a snake that might bite her. She started, then stopped. "I can explain." "I'm sure you can," I said. "But before you do, there's one more thing everyone should know." I looked around the table, making eye contact with each family member. Yesterday, after Ember came home, I asked her directly if she was having an affair. She looked me in the eye and said no. She said Wes was just a friend going through a difficult time, and she was trying to help. I paused, letting that sink in. This morning, I called Susie Farrow to check on that story. Turns out Wes told his wife he was going on a fishing trip with college friends. No mention of marriage problems or needing advice from Ember. Ember's face went pale. The carefully constructed story was falling apart, and she knew it. "So either Wes lied to his wife about needing marriage counseling," I continued, "or Ember lied to all of us about what this weekend was really about. Either way, someone's not telling the truth." My brother Mike leaned forward. "Ember, is there anything you want to say?" Ember looked around the table at faces that had gone from sympathetic to skeptical to openly hostile. The family that had welcomed her for 8 years was now seeing her clearly for the first time. She started, then stopped. Her shoulders sagged as the fight went out of her. "I made a mistake," she said quietly. "A terrible mistake." "What kind of mistake?" my mother asked, her voice gentle but firm. Ember was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I've been seeing Wes for 3 months. It started as friendship, but it became something else. The hotel weekend was supposed to be our first real time alone together." The admission hit the table like a physical blow. My grandmother, who'd been quietly eating her dinner throughout the entire conversation, looked up with sharp eyes. "Young lady," she said in the voice that had terrified grandchildren for decades, "are you telling us you've been lying to this family for 3 months? Grandma, are you telling us you were planning to betray your marriage vows and humiliate my grandson while pretending to be a loving wife?" Ember started crying in earnest now, but it was too late for tears to save her. "I think," my father said quietly, "you should leave." Ember looked around the table one more time, searching for any face that might offer forgiveness or understanding. She found none. "I'm sorry," she whispered, gathering her purse. "I'm so sorry." After she left, the family sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Finally, my Uncle Paul spoke up. "Well, that was something." "That was justice," my grandmother corrected. "Sometimes the truth needs a little help coming out." My mother reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you for handling this with dignity," she said. "You could have been cruel, but you just let the facts speak for themselves." "The facts were pretty loud," I said. As the family gradually returned to normal dinner conversation, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The truth was out, completely and undeniably. There would be no more lies, no more gaslighting, no more wondering if I was imagining things. My marriage was over, but my integrity was intact, and sometimes that's the best revenge of all. Monday morning arrived with the kind of clarity that comes after a storm passes. I woke up in my own bed, in my own house, with no need to wonder where my wife was or who she was with. The uncertainty that had been eating at me for weeks was gone. replaced by something much simpler: the knowledge that I was now in complete control of my own life. I made coffee, read the newspaper, and prepared for what I knew would be a complicated day. The family dinner had been just the beginning. Now came the practical work of dismantling 8 years of shared life. My first call was to David Chen, the lawyer who'd handled our house purchase. He listened patiently as I explained the situation and outlined what I wanted to accomplish. "Divorce proceedings can take months," he said, "but there are some immediate steps we can take to protect your interests." "What kind of steps?" "Well, you mentioned that you and Wes Farrow have a business partnership. We should review those contracts immediately. If there's a morality clause or any language about conduct that could damage the business, we might have grounds to dissolve the partnership on favorable terms." I'd forgotten about the partnership agreement we'd signed 3 years ago when we'd formalized our consulting business. Wes had insisted on including language about maintaining professional standards and avoiding conduct that could harm the company's reputation. At the time, I'd thought it was overkill. Now, it looked like a gift. "I'll send you the partnership documents this morning," I said. "Good. Also, I'd recommend documenting everything. Every conversation, every text message, every piece of evidence related to the affair. If this gets ugly, you want to be prepared." It was already ugly, but I understood his point. My second call was to the bank. I explained that I needed to freeze access to our joint accounts pending divorce proceedings. The banker, who'd known Ember and me for years, was sympathetic but professional. "I can freeze the accounts, but she'll be notified immediately," he warned. "That's fine," I said. "I want her to know exactly where things stand." My third call was to Wes. "Tanner," he answered on the first ring, his voice cautious. "I guess we need to talk." "Yes, we do," I said. "But not over the phone. Meet me at the office in an hour." "Listen, man, I know this looks bad, but—" "1 hour," I said, and hung up. The office of Jossman Farrow Consulting was located in a small business complex on the edge of town. We'd chosen the space 3 years ago when our construction consulting business had grown large enough to need a proper office. It was nothing fancy, just 2 desks, a conference table, and a filing cabinet, but it represented everything Wes and I had built together. Today, it was going to represent the end of that partnership. I arrived early and spent the time reviewing our client contracts, vendor agreements, and financial records. As the business manager, I handled most of the paperwork while Wes focused on the technical consulting and client relationships. It was a division of labor that had worked well for 3 years. It was also a division of labor that gave me significant leverage. Wes arrived exactly on time, looking like he hadn't slept much. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by the nervous energy of someone who knew he was about to face consequences. "Tanner, before you say anything, I want you to know that I never meant for this to happen." "Sit down, Wes," I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. He sat, fidgeting with his keys. It started innocently. Ember was having problems with her fitness classes, and I was helping her think through some business ideas. We were just friends. "When did friends become more than friends?" I asked. "I don't know. Gradually. We started texting more, meeting for coffee. She was unhappy, Tanner. She felt like you weren't paying attention to her anymore. So you decided to pay attention to her instead." "It wasn't like that," Wes said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We tried to stop it. We both knew it was wrong." "Apparently you didn't try very hard," I said, pulling out the hotel reservation confirmation. "This doesn't look like someone trying to stop anything." Wes stared at the paper, his face flushing red. "How did you get this?" "It was sent to our shared email account, the one Ember set up for household business. Imagine my surprise when I found out my wife was planning a romantic getaway with my business partner. Tanner, I'm sorry. I'm really, truly sorry. I know I messed up, but we can work through this. We're partners. We're friends." "Were," I corrected. Past tense. I pulled out the partnership agreement and placed it on the desk between us. Section 12, I said. Conduct standards. Either partner can dissolve the partnership immediately if the other partner engages in conduct that damages or could damage the reputation of the business. Wes picked up the contract and read the relevant section, his face growing paler with each word. You think having an affair with your partner's wife might damage our business reputation? I asked. Come on, Tanner, this is between us. It doesn't have to affect the business. It already has affected the business, I said. I've spent the last 3 days dealing with family drama instead of working on the Henderson project. I've missed calls from potential clients because I was too busy documenting my wife's betrayal. And starting today, I can't trust my business partner not to stab me in the back. I pulled out another set of documents, transfer papers that would give me full ownership of the business assets, client contracts, and vendor relationships. You can sign these voluntarily, I said, or I can invoke the conduct clause and force a dissolution that will be much messier and more public. Wes stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. You're taking everything? I'm taking what I built, I said. You're welcome to start your own consulting business. Just don't expect to use any of our client relationships or vendor contracts. This is crazy, Tanner. You're destroying 3 years of partnership over a mistake. A mistake? I stood up, feeling anger rise in my chest for the first time since this whole situation began. You think planning a romantic weekend with my wife is a mistake? You think 3 months of lying to my face is a mistake? I know you're angry. I'm not angry, Wes. I'm done. With you, with Ember, with all the lies and betrayal and drama. I'm moving on, and I'm doing it without either of you. Wes sat quietly for a long moment, processing what was happening. Finally, he picked up a pen and signed the transfer papers. For what it's worth, he said as he stood to leave, I really am sorry. I know, I said, but sorry doesn't fix anything. After Wes left, I spent the rest of the day making phone calls. I contacted every client to explain that Wes was no longer with the company and that I would be handling all future projects personally. I called our vendors to update the account information and payment procedures. I changed the locks on the office and had new business cards printed. By 5 o'clock, Jossman Farrow Consulting had become Jossman Consulting, and I was the sole owner of a business that was actually more profitable without Wes's overhead. That evening, I drove past Wes's house on my way home from the grocery store. His truck was in the driveway, but there was a suitcase by the front door and Susie was loading boxes into her car. Apparently, I wasn't the only one making changes. I stopped and rolled down my window. Susie, everything okay? She looked up from the box she was carrying, and I could see she'd been crying. Oh, hi, Tanner, she said, wiping her eyes. I heard about, well, everything. I'm so sorry. Are you moving out? For now, she said. I need some time to think, some space to figure out what I want to do next. Where will you go? My sister's place, initially, then maybe a hotel until I can find an apartment. I thought about this for a moment. Susie, can I ask you something? Sure. How long have you known? She was quiet for a long moment, then set down the box she was holding. I suspected something was going on about 6 weeks ago, she said. Wes was acting different, secretive. He was getting texts at weird hours and being very protective of his phone. Did you confront him? I tried. He denied everything, said I was being paranoid, but last week I found a credit card statement with charges for flowers and jewelry that I never received. What did you do? Susie smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. I hired a private investigator. This was news to me. What did you find out? Everything, she said. Photos, text messages, a complete timeline of their relationship. I was planning to file for divorce next week anyway. Your family dinner just moved up my timeline. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. I know this is hard. Actually, Susie said, it's liberating. I've been living with a liar for months, wondering if I was crazy or if my husband was really having an affair. Now I know for sure, and I can stop wondering. I understood exactly what she meant. If you need anything, I said, a reference for an apartment, help moving, whatever, just let me know. Thank you, she said. And Tanner? What you did at that dinner was brilliant. Ember never saw it coming. As I drove home, I reflected on the day's accomplishments. I'd dissolved a business partnership, secured my financial interests, and discovered that I wasn't the only victim in this situation. Susie had been betrayed just as thoroughly as I had, and she was handling it with the same kind of strategic thinking I'd employed. Maybe we could help each other navigate what came next. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. This is Ember. I'm staying with a friend. We need to talk about the kids and the house and everything else. Can we meet somewhere neutral? I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, have your lawyer call my lawyer. We'll talk through them. Her response came immediately. It doesn't have to be like this. We can work things out like adults. You should have thought about that before you booked a hotel room with my business partner, I typed back. Then I blocked her number. I was done with conversations, done with explanations, done with drama. From now on, everything would be handled through lawyers and legal documents. Clean, professional, and final. The scorched earth phase of my revenge was complete. Now came the rebuilding. 3 weeks later, I was settling into a new routine that felt surprisingly normal. The house was quieter without Ember's constant chatter, but it was also more peaceful. I'd rearranged the furniture, repainted the living room, and turned Ember's home office into a proper workspace for my consulting business. The physical changes helped reinforce the psychological ones. This was my space now, shaped by my choices and preferences. The divorce proceedings were moving forward with the efficient brutality that only legal documents can provide. David Chen had been right about having evidence. Every text message, every hotel confirmation, every lie documented in the family group chat had made Ember's position essentially indefensible. Her lawyer was pushing for a quick settlement rather than risk a trial that would expose even more embarrassing details. The business was thriving. Without Wes's overhead, and with my complete focus on client relationships, I'd actually increased revenue while reducing expenses. 3 new clients had signed contracts in the past 2 weeks, drawn by referrals from satisfied customers who appreciated working with someone they could trust. But the real satisfaction came from watching the social consequences play out. Word travels fast in a community like ours, especially when it involves scandal and betrayal. The story of the family dinner had spread through various networks, church groups, school parent committees, neighborhood associations, fitness classes. Ember's reputation, carefully cultivated over 8 years, had been destroyed in a single evening. She'd resigned from her position at the community center fitness program, citing personal reasons. Several of her regular clients had requested different instructors. The yoga studio where she taught weekend classes had quietly removed her from their schedule. Wes was facing his own consequences. 2 of our former clients had specifically requested to continue working with me rather than hiring him independently. His reputation for reliability had been damaged by association with the scandal, and potential customers were questioning his judgment and character. But the most interesting development came from an unexpected source, Susie Farrow. She called me on a Thursday evening while I was reviewing project proposals. Tanner, do you have a few minutes to talk? Of course, I said. How are you holding up? Better than expected, actually. I wanted to update you on some developments you might find interesting. What kind of developments? Well, remember how I mentioned hiring a private investigator? Yeah. It turns out Ember and Wes weren't as careful as they thought they were. The investigator has photos, video, detailed records of their meetings going back almost 4 months. This was longer than the 3 months Ember had admitted to at the family dinner. What are you planning to do with that information? I asked. Originally, I was just going to use it in the divorce proceedings, but then I started thinking about the bigger picture. What do you mean? Tanner, they didn't just betray us personally. They betrayed our entire social circle. All those friends who trusted them, who included them in family gatherings, who considered them part of the community. Those people deserve to know who they've been associating with. I could see where this was going, and I wasn't sure how I felt about it. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we give people the complete picture. Not rumors or speculation, but documented facts about what really happened. Susie, I understand the impulse, but… Tanner, last week Ember tried to join the PTA committee at the elementary school. She's positioning herself as a victim of circumstances, telling people that you overreacted to an innocent friendship. She's trying to rehabilitate her image by painting you as the villain. This was news to me, and it was infuriating. The idea that Ember was trying to flip the narrative, to make herself the wronged party, was beyond audacious. What do you want to do? I asked. I want to host a gathering. Nothing dramatic, just a casual get-together with the people who were affected by their lies. Our mutual friends, the parents from school, people from the neighborhood. A chance to share information and let everyone make their own decisions about who they want to associate with. You want to have a public shaming party? I want to have an information sharing session, Susie corrected. Let people see the evidence and draw their own conclusions. I thought about this for a moment. Part of me was tempted. The idea of exposing Ember's attempts to rewrite history was appealing. But another part of me wondered if this was going too far. When were you thinking of doing this? I asked. This weekend, Saturday evening. I've already talked to Richard and Nikki, and they're interested. So are the Hendersons and the Millers. What would you show them? Photos of Ember and Wes together at places they claimed they'd never been. Text messages discussing their plans. Hotel receipts for previous meetings that we didn't know about. A complete timeline that shows this wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a calculated, ongoing deception. The more she talked, the more I realized that Susie had been conducting her own investigation with the same methodical approach I'd used. She had evidence I didn't even know existed. There's something else, she continued. Something that might interest you from a business perspective. What's that? Wes has been using company resources for his personal affairs. The investigator found evidence that he was using the business credit card to pay for some of their meetings. Dinners, hotel rooms, gifts. He was essentially stealing from your partnership to fund his affair with your wife. This was potentially criminal, not just personal betrayal. If Wes had been using business funds for personal expenses without my knowledge, that was embezzlement. Do you have documentation of this? I asked. Complete records, dates, amounts, locations, everything you'd need to file criminal charges if you wanted to. I sat quietly for a moment, processing this information. The evidence Susie had gathered could destroy both Ember and Wes completely, not just socially, but potentially legally and financially as well. Susie, why are you sharing this with me? Because they hurt both of us, she said simply, and because I think people deserve to know the truth about who they're dealing with. What do you need from me? Just show up Saturday night. Bring whatever evidence you have. Let our friends and neighbors see the complete picture and make their own decisions. I agreed to think about it, but I already knew what my answer would be. Ember's attempt to rehabilitate her image at my expense had crossed a line. If she wanted to play victim, she was going to have to do it with all the facts on the table. Saturday evening, I arrived at Susie's sister's house, a modest ranch in a subdivision about 10 minutes from our neighborhood. The living room had been arranged for a presentation, with chairs facing a large television screen and a coffee table covered with printed documents. The guest list was exactly what Susie had promised. Richard and Nikki Morrison, the Hendersons from down the street, the Millers from the school PTA, John Mitchell from the restaurant business, and about a dozen other people who'd been part of our social circle for years. Thanks for coming, Susie said as people settled into their seats. I know this is unusual, but I think it's important that everyone has accurate information about recent events. She started with a timeline, showing when the affair had actually begun based on credit card records and private investigator reports. 4 months, not 3. Multiple hotel meetings, not just the one weekend that had been exposed. Then she showed the photos. The private investigator had been thorough. There were pictures of Ember and Wes entering hotels together, leaving restaurants hand in hand, kissing in parking lots. The images were time-stamped and dated, creating an undeniable record of their relationship. The room was completely silent as people processed what they were seeing. These weren't abstract accusations or he said she said disputes. These were documented facts, presented with the cold efficiency of a criminal prosecution. The financial records are equally revealing, Susie continued, pulling up spreadsheets on the television screen. Wes used the business credit card to pay for hotel rooms, dinners, jewelry, and other gifts. Total amount, over $8,000. Gasps around the room. The Hendersons' teenage daughter worked part-time at the restaurant. They knew how hard it was to make money in the food service business. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a temporary lapse in judgment, Susie concluded. This was a calculated, ongoing deception that involved lying to spouses, friends, family members, and business associates. It involved theft of business funds and betrayal of personal relationships that some of us had maintained for years. When she finished, the room remained quiet for several minutes. Finally, Richard spoke up. "What do you want us to do with this information?" "Whatever you think is appropriate," Susie said. "I'm not asking anyone to choose sides or take action. I just wanted to make sure everyone had the facts." Nikki Morrison raised her hand. "Has anyone talked to Ember about this? Given her a chance to respond?" "Ember had a chance to tell the truth at the family dinner 3 weeks ago," I said, speaking for the first time that evening. "She chose to lie instead. She's had multiple opportunities to come clean, and she's consistently chosen deception." "What about now?" asked Mrs. Miller. "Is she still trying to maintain the lies?" "As of last week, she was telling people at the school that I overreacted to an innocent friendship," I said. "She's trying to rehabilitate her reputation by rewriting history." The murmur that went through the room was not sympathetic to Ember. "I think," said Mr. Henderson slowly, "that this explains a lot of things that didn't make sense before." Over the next hour, people shared their own observations and experiences. Suspicious behavior they'd noticed, but dismissed. Lies that hadn't seemed important at the time. A pattern of deception that extended far beyond just the affair. By the time the evening ended, it was clear that Ember's attempt to rehabilitate her image had backfired spectacularly. The people who might have been willing to give her the benefit of the doubt now had documented proof that she'd been lying to them for months. As people prepared to leave, several of them approached me privately. "I'm sorry we didn't see this sooner," Nikki said. "We should have been better friends to you." "You couldn't have known," I replied. "They were very good at hiding it." "Not good enough," Richard added grimly. "And now everyone knows exactly who they really are." As I drove home that night, I reflected on the evening's events. The evidence Susie had presented was devastating, far more comprehensive than anything I'd compiled on my own. Ember and Wes weren't just exposed, they were completely destroyed, socially and professionally. Part of me felt satisfied. Justice had been served, and the truth was, finally, completely revealed. But another part of me felt something unexpected. Pity. Ember had thrown away 8 years of marriage, a family, and a respected place in the community for a few months of excitement with a man who'd proven himself to be a liar and a thief. Wes had destroyed his own marriage and his professional reputation for the same temporary thrill. They'd both lost everything that mattered for something that was never going to last. The next morning, I woke up in my quiet house, made coffee for one, and read the newspaper in peaceful silence. My phone didn't ring with frantic calls from a cheating wife. My email didn't contain urgent messages from a backstabbing business partner. My calendar didn't include any meetings to discuss lies or betrayals or damage control. For the first time in months, my life was completely, blissfully drama-free. The revenge was complete. The truth was out. The consequences had been delivered. Now I could finally move forward, free from the weight of other people's lies and betrayals. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's simply removing toxic people from your life and watching them destroy themselves. And sometimes, the truth really is enough.